All right. So I am tired of hearing about this concept of contract prison, etc. And it's bothly in large due part because of just players are idiots, but also because there is some nefariousness from agents. And first, I just want to start off with this. Do not trust agents. I repeat, do not trust player agents because all of them are out to make a buck. Oftentimes, a lot of these player agents make a commission. The whole point of a commission is that you need to sell shit. And on top of that, a commission is largely based off a percentage. So that means that if the entire deal is worth 3%, obviously, if they make a $1 million contract versus a $2 million contract at 3% versus 3%, obviously they're going to go with the higher contract deal, right? So you need to be aware if you are a player that you need to keep on track these different percentages and what it means to you in terms of that. And how fast that, these agents can dish out these deals. So that is first and foremost. Second of all is, all you plebs, if you don't care about all the numbers and shit, I assure you to at least tune out halfway through this shit. The beginning part's going to be pretty interesting, but the rest of this shit is just going to deal with numbers. So, if you don't care about that, then fuck off. So, anyways, let's talk about the collusion. Yes, I'm going to say the collusion because I think it's collusion between G2 and C9 for Cloud9 perks. This is a very big deal, and this is something that I think is very fucked up. Perks should have looked through this, and it was in part in his negligence of this. It was also his agent to where he didn't inform him of what was going on in the background, etc. And also this was a large negligence of Riot, particularly. This, I think I would just mostly put this on 80%, 70% Riot in terms of this, because this should never happen ever, 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 ever in terms of any deal ever in the history of contract players ever, right? So this is what I would call collusion of embargo between G2 and Cloud9 in terms of, first of all, collusion being a secrecy of a pact between two different parties or multiple different parties, but also an embargo, meaning, if you are familiar with maybe how embargoes work with governments of Chinese embargo, or rather government, U.S. embargo against Chinese or whatever, in terms of how it costs more money to get over into our ports, etc. Or maybe there is a specific deal to where there is a halt of embargo between two different countries, etc. That's the same thing of G2 and Cloud9 colluding against Fnatic, right? And Jacob Wolf specifically said in his address of the whole free trade, I guess, agency, that there was a deal between G2 and C9, but it did not include Perks or Perks' contract, which means that there was collusion. It's just outright. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that's very nefarious. Fuck both of those orgs for doing that. I'll just call it outright. It's very nasty of them, I would say, and it's very fucked up to not include Perks on this, or rather, just his ideas, maybe how he wants to construct his own contract about this. But also, too, he should have known that this is legally just not binding at all anyways, because as I said before, it is collusion and it is somewhat of an embargo agreement. So, kind of like we all say, as we all know in behind the scenes, that there is this cartel, and this is kind of evident of the cartel itself, and this kind of sweeping the mask behind the face, or rather the face behind the mask. So yeah, It's completely fucked up. I don't agree with this. It's very fucked up, and it should let you into some light behind the scenes of exactly what goes on between these deals, between these teams. So, with that said, I would like to make this akin to something of like NDAs over like in CSGO. I'd like to make a complete comparison to where Heroic had created their players, made them sign an NDA saying that they would not talk about any cheating or any scandals, etc. And as maybe some of you guys might or might not know, Heroic was involved within the large coaching scandal that had happened, to where coaches were using a coaching bug to where they could view the entire map, or rather a specific portion of the map, between spectator mode within a live match, a live CSGO match, in a tournament, and they could view a specific, like say a bomb site, right? They could view bomb site A, and they could just be like, oh, nobody's here. Go to bomb site A. Everybody go here. And so Heroic players had signed an NDA, and obviously, guess what? An NDA doesn't cover illegal activity. It's not something that an NDA covers. So clearly you have to know your rights in order to, be able to negotiate within these contracts. But a lot of these players are very, they just don't know what entails of what is like legally dubious and what is not. And so they get caught up in these different contracts, of which is very ambiguous, at least to them, because they don't know the law. And so I would say that players need to be more educated on what, they can or cannot do within a contract. And on top of that, to not fully trust their agent. Like, fuck your agents. I'm just telling you right now, because your agents, they're just out to make a buck. Just like I said before, it's the idea that, well, they are mostly based on a commission, right, of a percentage. So if your percentage is higher versus a $2 million contract versus a $4 million contract, obviously they're going to make a higher end on the $4 million contract. So, like, you better be aware as a player that you need to watch your shit, because obviously also too, these agents have a monopoly on the entire esports industry, because no one is within esports. So you have a very select few of agents in order to, select from. So that becomes a problem of supply and demand in terms of, well, how many players are there, which is the supply, how many demand are there of the agents. And so therefore it creates this funnel effect, right? So just be very wary when you're a player. Be smart about your contracts, man. Like, and read your actual shit. You can't afford to rely on, these player agents, because obviously they fucked over a lot of people. Just think about it. So, buyouts. Let's talk about buyouts. Now, please contain a buyout clause if you're a star player. Obviously, you cannot afford a high buyout. And this becomes more because, like, obviously you aren't in control of a buyout if you're a rookie player. The buyout is the buyout. You have no leverage. You have no brand. You have no fame, etc. So you're kind of at the whim of that organization if you want to be signed initially to the academy roster, and then, you're held in that contract. Then it goes into maybe the LCS contract, etc. So you're kind of stuck at the whim of that. But if you're a star player, you need to have a buyout clause. Sorry, if you haven't built that in, you're an idiot. So, with that said, every League of Legends fans are just like, whoa, all these buyouts are fucking crazy, blah, blah, blah. Like, CSGO buyouts are fucking insane. So, Nico, very famous Counter-Strike player, very legendary, probably deserves to be in the Hall of Fame at some point. He had a $300,000 buyout from Mouse Sports to FaZe Clan. Now, a lot of you guys don't know Mouse Sports, so, it's fine. But FaZe Clan, you guys recognize that. And very large buyout, $300K. Stewie 2K from Cloud9 had a buyout to Immortals for $500,000K. It's ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. Immortals, core to 100 Thieves. So we're talking about Henny, Lucas, and FNX had $100 million buyout. So 3 people. So, you could lop that up to $333K per player, right? Cold Zera, probably the most prolific. He was also voted, I think he was like player of the year by HLTV at one point, 2017. From MIBR to FaZe, $1 million for a 2-year contract. So this is in line with League of Legends player buyouts, I would say. This is very in line. And if you think, that like it's crazy that there's these League of Legends buyouts, etc., like just look at CSGO. That's probably the most comparable game because, Valorant is very new. Overwatch is it's a fucking dead game. You have Dota, who largely move off of a prize pool, right? So they don't have great salaries, etc. So like CSGO is probably the most apt comparison. And so, yeah, they have crazy buyouts as well, too. But that's the importance of negotiating your buyout and exactly how that looks within your entire contract and have a clause within your contract about buyouts, etc., so you don't get stuck in contract prison. Also, additionally, do not sign for more than 2 years. I keep fucking saying this for esports players, and the fact that you don't have an incredibly long career, especially within League of Legends, because you don't know how well you're going to adapt to the meta. You don't know how well your brand is going to survive throughout the years, etc. So you have 2 different factors that you need to account for. And also the stigma against older-ish age, right? We're talking like 26 years plus. If you're 26 years plus, it's, like apparently you're old. So, yes, do not sign for more than 2 years. Basically, you are committing yourself. It's something akin to, I'd like to draw back to something I think Thorin had said before in terms of the age of esports players. And, this isn't esports careers, but he said esports players and the fact that you need to attach five years, or you need to subtract 5 years from an esports player. And the fact that if someone claims that they are 20 years old, you need to subtract 5 years from their maturity. It's kind of the same thing of, like esports contracts, and the fact that you should probably multiply that times 3 years. So if you commit to 2 years, that's times 3 years in regular sports contracts, I would say. So, 2 years equals a 6-year contract in the NBA or the NFL. So be very careful when you sign those types of deals. 2 years, I would say, would be the maximum. That would just be my suggestion. So also be very careful on signing mid-year contracts in terms of if you sign a mid-year contract like what happened with Solo over in Golden Guardians, is the fact that he signed, I think it was a 1.5-year contract. And the point is that you give yourself up in terms of that to where now you can have a buyout clause that doesn't favor you and you aren't really in control of your own destiny. And not only that, but you need to recognize that when someone tries to sign you mid-year, so, in between summer or in between spring and summer, you need to realize that you have the leverage as the player because obviously they're looking for you to resurrect their organization. So that means that you have all the leverage in the fucking world. So don't be a fucking idiot when it comes to that negotiation. You have all the leverage in the world. So don't squander that at all. And, teams saying that, oh, well, you weren't signed beforehand, and you don't have a team now, like we could just not go with you, blah, blah, blah. There's a reason that they're reaching out to you because they realize that you could get them, maybe a trophy or at least within the playoffs, etc., or maybe into Worlds. So there's a reason why they're reaching out to you. Don't squander that leverage. Don't be fucking stupid, first of all. So there's that. I'll give you that one for fucking free. I'll be your goddamn agent. So, anyways, that's the whole idea of, mid-year contracts. Just be very wary when you sign that shit. In terms of that, your buyout clause. If you do sign a mid-year contract, just be very wary about your buyout clause. Also, on top of this, be wary of your bench clause or your academy clause when it comes to just anything in particular. And in fact, you need to have a signed deal to say, I will make this much amount of money if I get, put onto the bench. I will make this much amount of money if I'm put onto academy. And so you need to have these written in your contract. Otherwise, you can get fucked and you can get finagled to where maybe they move you over into the academy because it costs cheaper to put you into the academy and then bring in the academy guy into the LCS spot because of how the contracts work. So you just need to be aware of this if you're a player at all. Just be aware of those separate clauses. Lastly, I want to talk about taxes because no one ever talks about this in the LCS or really in the professional scene because they're just afraid to talk about finances. So so taxes. Germany has shit taxes. So let me go ahead and bring this shit up here. So I was going to actually do an article about this, but I just had decided to never not to because I didn't get too much of information or people that are lawyers. By the way, I'm not a lawyer. Let's put that as a disclosure here at kind of the end. I have worked on some big deals, like $1 million deals, for, some lawyer shit, but I was never like the finalizing author on any of this. I just saw some agreement, not in esports, by the way. So just gonna put that too. But obviously a lot of these contract deals are very pedantic. They are very sensitive to English language. You need to be very specific. And so as someone that kind of writes for a living, a little bit, I guess you could say, you need to be attuned to this type of language and question everything and say, I want it in this specific language. I want it so that it's jam-packed. Like, fuck you, give me this particular language because it's very important and people can go back on that shit and fuck you over. So please just pay attention to the language. Language is so important. This is why understanding, as I say, when I talk about writing, understanding how to write and how to read is one of the most powerful things that you can ever come up with when it comes to being, a studious person within school. So let's go to taxes. So U.S. citizens must pay both the tax rate of the country they work in as well as their U.S. tax for income after. Not more, big difference. You should subtract this number from your total income. So say, $105,900. So you made $200,000. You must pay your 42% tax rate, German tax rate, and then subtract the $200,000 minus $105,900. Your tax bracket would then become 24% for the U.S. tax, right? Because you're paying the German tax first and then the U.S. tax second. You would also have to pay the 5.5% solidarity tax from Germany, which is a tax that happened in World War II or some shit like that, and to where I think it's like East Germany has to pay West Germany or West Germany has to pay East Germany. I think it's West Germany has to pay East Germany, something like that. It's very fucked up. And also, by the way, for all you German players, you might also have a religious tax too. Look into this. Like specifically, I'm kind of giving you free money here. Look into the, there is a religious tax to where I think it's an opt-out to where you have to opt out to pay this tax to where it pays to the, I want to say it's the Catholic Church. and it's something like 5% or 2% or something of your income, and you have to opt out of that in order to not pay them. So just look into that. Talk to your tax people, whatever the fuck. But it's very fucked up. Yeah, a lot of German people are pissed off about the religious tax, etc. So just look into that. I don't know if, as a foreigner, if you need to pay that or not, but I assume that you do because you have to abide by German tax laws. So just look into that shit because it's very real. Anyways, let's go into U.S. tax laws. So obviously, anyone that's going to be coming over here from overseas is going to be paying more than $500,000. And then also you have the California tax law, which goes on top of the U.S. tax law, if any foreigners don't know. And so you're probably going to be paying that 2.3% plus the 1% because you're probably a millionaire. Otherwise, why the fuck would we import your ass? And then also anything that you buy within Los Angeles is going to cost 9.5% tax rate. This includes hot food. And yeah, it's mostly just hot food, and if you make $1 million, you're probably going to pay in total about 50.3% tax rate. And then, you have your sales tax, which is, I believe, not included. So now let's look at Germany's tax rate. It's 42% for anyone that makes under $296,000 a year. Anyone who makes over $296,000 a year are charged 45%. And then Germany also tax on the 5.5% surcharge for the solidarity tax to help East Germany. And then sales tax in Berlin is fucking insane at 19%. So essentially, what I'm... All right, well, hang on. Let's go with the Korean tax too. 38% greater than 251,000. And these tax rates only apply to Korean citizens. U.S. citizens would pay a flat rate of 20.9% tax. Korea also has a sales tax of 10%. So you must pay 90. So if you're at $95,631.18 for the 38% tax bracket in Korea. So what I'm getting at essentially is that Americans will never go to LEC. That's what I'm getting at. This is like the secret shit that no one wants to fucking talk about is the fact that the reason why Doublelift hasn't gone over to LEC. This is the reason why Afromoo hasn't gone to LEC, or any superstar NA player hasn't gone to LEC is because of the taxes. Like, at least that's why I wouldn't go over there. And not only that, but it's just like, dude, like, even considering that, also consider the streaming rate for taxes, and the fact that if I'm a streamer, I can actually move to a different state and get even lower taxes than that. Why do you think I will dominate moved over to Texas? Oh, you think it's just because it's a great state and he just enjoyed fucking Southern barbecue? It's like, no, he realized that he would make way more money in Texas. Why? It's because Texas, by the way, has a 0% tax rate in terms of, the state tax rate. So he doesn't actually have to pay as much tax rate in California as he does in Texas. He just has to pay the federal tax rate instead of the state tax rate. So this is, like, you guys don't understand, maybe all like the younger people, not trying to attack you guys, like, why the fuck? I wouldn't know this if, I was under 30 years old anyways. But it becomes more interesting as you start to realize bigger and bigger numbers, right? But yeah, I would never realize this. I would never dig into this. Who gives a fuck at that point, But at this point, when you're making very big numbers, a couple percentages actually means a lot when you're making millions and millions of dollars. 10% of $1 million, dude, that's $100,000, homie. It's a lot of fucking money when you think about it, right? So, like, it's obvious that this is going to mean a lot to streamers. It's going to mean a lot to pro players, etc. So this is why all these contracts and all these intricacies within contracts actually make sense. So I just want to point out, this is exactly what is going on behind the scenes. Like, and it might not be forefront and center, but this is exactly what's going on. And I urge players to read their contracts, first of all, have buyout clauses that are favorable to them, etc. And just very be aware about exactly what you're dealing with when it comes to, these particular contracts, and especially, your tax rates, etc. within different countries and how you're going to be taxed. So yeah, just dig into this, look into this, because it's something that you need to be very wary of, but also that fans just have zero idea about. So I just wanted to shed light on this.